There's a party now.
Yay.
Hello.
Hey, Rachel. Nice to meet you.
Hello. Nice
Hi,
to meet you
Rachel.
too.
Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
We got Kurt. Kurt, I don't know if you like to lurk in the shadows, but I don't know. Let me know if you want to come on screen. Either way, I'll keep my eyes on the chat. Let's see here. Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. This is super. This is the first one, actually, of all of our live streams we've done covering a TV show. So this was actually, I think, Lisa's idea. We've all been in a second, but this is exciting. So we're like almost a year into Stream Team, and this is our first TV show. Hopefully many more to come. So thought we could start and go around, just introduce yourself, and then also how did you first hear about Severance, and then we will jump into some next steps. But let's start maybe with Jackie.
Hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Yeah, I'm Jackie, Jeremy's wife. When did I hear about Severance? I don't know. I think it was like a really big deal when it first came out and everyone was talking about it, and I just like jumped on the bandwagon.
Yeah, I'll add to that because hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm Jackie's husband and amateur video game podcaster. I remember people just saying like, you have to see this show and go in blind. Don't know anything about it. And so Jackie, and it pops up on your like smart TV ads all the time, and it's there's like a mystique and kind of spookiness about it. Before you kind of know, I mean, even after you know what the show's about, it's still pretty spooky. So I remember Jackie and I just, were laying in bed one day, we clicked, and then totally grabbed by the first season.
How about Lisa?
Well, first of all, I want to say your Audi likes the corner brownie and is a very strong swimmer.
It's true.
I can't help it. So I was a latecomer to Severance. I didn't subscribe to Apple TV for a while, and then I was like, okay, what did I subscribe to it for? It wasn't Severance. It was something else. I can't quite remember what it was. But first, I didn't want to watch it because I knew severance meant that it's like when you're laid off from work, right? What do you get as your severance package and stuff like that? Sincerely, like I got a lot of the movies that Adam Scott was in, but let's be honest, he plays an asshole, although a good asshole, in about 99% of them, and I'm like, I'm not really interested in that, okay? So, but I love Ben Stiller. And one of my favorite comfort movies is The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which Adam plays an asshole in, right? And I happened to see an autoplay preview of the show, and I was like, what is this? I don't understand what this is. So I was like, okay, I'll bite. I'm in between shows at the moment, right? And I, of course, immediately got sucked in because you're watching and you're taking it in, and then a million questions start to go through your head, which is, they don't answer quite away, but they do for the most part as the story unfolds. And there you go. So that's
yeah.
it.
Let's take it up with Rachel. Rachel's coming in hot. What's your relationship to Severance?
I wanted Lisa to finish.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh no, that's it. That's and so it unfolded. I think that a lot of questions have been answered, considering, comparing it to Lost, which a lot of people do compare this show to, which literally like would throw junk at you and be like, we're just gonna drop that. The Bigfoot with the 3 toes, nobody knows, nobody cares, so that kind of a thing. But I do feel like there's some answers, but the questions that you formulate later on down the line, you're like, oh, my first questions weren't important, right? It's the questions later on that are more important.
Yeah, makes sense.
Interesting, because I made a list right after I finished watching. I'll talk about how I got to Severance, but right after I finished watching season 2, which was just this past week, I immediately wrote a list of like questions that are off the top of my head. It was like I stopped at 25. Like
wow.
I stopped at 25, and I was like, this is a good example of like all the things that it didn't answer for me. So that's why I'm like, did it really? I'll drop them in the community at some point in time. Maybe I'll put them as a comment to this event, or when you post the replay, Kyle, I'll post them. But yeah, so I knew about Severance from the beginning. I knew about the concept of it. Working in tech, just naturally, it was something that was a little bit curious. And I'm like, oh, interesting. Or you could just not remember. Like, 'cause a lot of times I don't want to remember work, you know? so I thought, that's an interesting premise. But at the time, I didn't have Apple TV Plus. Later, I got Apple TV Plus because I wanted to watch Shrinking and a couple of other shows, Mystic Quest and some other things. And so I got it, and it was on my list of Apple TV Plus shows to watch. But I was like, I just wasn't. There was no pressure for me to see it. And so I was like, and then in this community, in the Stream Team community, everybody was talking about it. I was like, wow, I should really check this thing out. And then when Kyle posted this event, I was like, okay, this is the pressure that I needed to go watch, to go stream, seasons 1 and season 2. And Kyle knows this because I posted like halfway through. I was like, what is everybody so enamored with? I was like, I don't understand. I was like, why does everybody love this show? I don't get it. And I was like, okay, no, just keep watching, And by the end of season 1, I was like, I don't think I want to watch season 3 or season 2. And I was like, but I gotta finish it for the, for the event. And when I was done, I was just like, I don't get it. I was like, I'm completely baffled by what everybody is so enamored with this show. Like, for me, like I walked away and I felt like I was viscerally angry with the showrunners for wasting roughly 20 hours of my time for the television equivalent of clickbait. It's the television equivalent of clickbait. There's nothing there. But
I've heard that. I've heard it's love it or hate it.
Yeah. You're bringing the Jeremy Pink Flamingos energy to this, which I love. So.
Oh yeah, we need it.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
How about Sarah? I know how you were who you were bugged by about it for sure.
Can't hear you, Sarah.
You're muted or something.
Oh, I just said I think Kyle. But yeah, so Kyle watched it a long time ago, like the first season I think when it came out, and talked about it a lot. So I saw clips here and there because like whenever he's watching stuff, I come in and out. And there are some shows that I completely grasp with my walking in and out. I'm like, oh, that guy's bad, or like they're having an affair. And he's like, shut up, you're ruining the show for me. Or I'll say a line. I come in and I say a line and then immediately the person says it. But I think what's fun about Severance is that I never could get a sense of it. Even in the little clips I saw, like I never really knew what was going on. I mean, he did tell me the main concept, the split. So that's the only thing I kind of knew. So I actually watched it at the beginning of this month. I watched it pretty quick, like the first 2 weeks of May, I watched it. So it's really fresh in my mind because I just watched it. And, my rebellion and not wanting to watch it was just because Kyle kept pressuring me and it was irritating. So that's basically why I didn't want to watch it for so long.
Yeah. On the record, she also, I can't even say the words, but like John Wick, she won't watch it all the time.
Well, but I have a good reason for that. That's because it stresses me out. But that's a different thing. Yeah, that's not sheer rebellion.
Yeah, I, as evidenced by this community, like I like to watch a lot of TV and movies, but and also just keep up on like whether it's newsletters or sites or whatever, what's coming out. So I remember when this came out, I saw that Ben Stiller was going to do a new Apple TV show, and I was like, oh, that's going to be some dumb slapstick comedy. It'll be funny. And, so and then once I started, I was like, whoa. And then once it got to like the Egan's, I was like, whoa, what is this? And
what?
So I was like, it was my pick of every month I do like, here's what I watched. And then every year it's like the best of the year. That was my best of the year for TV for 2022 when it came out. And then we had to wait 3 painful years for season 2, which was like one of the longest breaks I've had from like a series that hasn't been rebooted or something that I've seen for a long time. And then season 2, I just tore through as it came out as well and had my mind blown by certain episodes. So we'll talk about it. But I thought we could start before we jump in. This is a little bit different since it's not a movie where we can just like go act by act. I broke it into chunks of certain episodes that need to be talked about, and then I've batched some others together so we can talk a little bit more kind of thematically than every little point because it would be too much to do. But just to start for some facts, so Severance is an American sci-fi thriller TV series created by Dan Erickson and executive produced and primarily directed by Ben Stiller. It premiered on February 18th, 2022. It received 14 nominations at the 74th Emmys. including Outstanding Drama Series and nominations for a lot of the cast: Adam Scott, John Turturro, Christopher Walken, Patricia Arquette, but it only won for main title design and musical score, both of which are pretty good. And then the second season premiered 3 years later in January 2025 this year, and it was just renewed in March for a third season. And Ben Stiller says it will be less of a wait this time for the third, but no time period yet. So it could be 2 years. I don't know. Dan Erickson conceived of it in a period of depression, working at an office job at a door factory after he completed his master's degree in television writing. He found the job so monotonous, he wished he could skip the 8 hours of the workday to disassociate and just get it over with. He submitted the pilot script to Ben Stiller's production company, Red Hour Productions, in 2015, so it's been a while. It was passed to Stiller by the development executive, Jackie Cohn. Erickson said the earlier version of the pilot was weirder and had stray elements, including a disembodied pair of legs running, a charred floor with burnt desks, and a woman trapped in a glass cubicle. But Erickson credits Ben Stiller with grounding the show, saying he felt the concept was weird enough, you didn't have to throw in a bunch of Terry Gilliam-esque bells and whistles at it. According to Erickson, he felt Ben fell in love with the show and thought it was about the weird human sadness of a person who would willingly do this to himself. Some of the media that they credit as inspiring Severance includes the movie Office Space, of course, The Truman Show, Being John Malkovich, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the Black Mirror episode White Christmas, and the comic strip Dilbert, setting aside the creator. Older influences include the existential hell in Jean-Paul Sartre's play No Exit, the totalitarian dystopia of 1984, and aesthetically was influenced by one of our previous picks, Brazil, Dark City, and Playtime. And then finally, just to wrap it up, he says, some of the frustrations that led to us to this moment as a country, the United States, and as a world are the ones I was feeling when I wrote this, because I was working office jobs dealing with increasingly insane requests that are made of workers. This was born of that. Employees are the ones who are expected to give and give and give with the understanding that this is a family. You're doing this out of love. Then often it's not returned by the employers in any kind of substantive way. The look of the show, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, as we go through this, blends corporate looks from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, citing modernist Eero Saarinen as an influence for the building design. This includes, the shout out to Sarah and I, includes inspiration from the John Deere World Headquarters in Moline, Illinois, where and the Bell Labs Holmdel complex in New Jersey, which is where the outside of the Lumen building and the first floor.
You can visit that place.
You can visit it, yeah, which is really cool. It says the soundstage used for the hallways in Severance was about 140 feet of hallway that they would rearrange as necessary. So they didn't have to build the whole thing, but they would just rearrange it for each shot as they needed it to have it be. And the cars and technology are from different eras, as you've noticed. There are cell phones, but then there are old, like rotary, like all sorts of mix of eras to give it a slight sense of disorientation and to make Lumen feel unmoored from time and space. The subtle facial distortion, this is another Stream Team shout out. The subtle facial distortion whenever a character moves from innie to outie in the elevator was pioneered by a film we mentioned constantly on this, this episode, which is Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. It was one of the first movies that did that technique. And then finally, Severance's creator, Dan Erickson, is originally from Olympia, Washington, where they had a string of drive-through fast food restaurants owned by the Egan family since 1948, which is where he got the name for the show. So I thought I'd start with the opener, and we can kind of open up for discussion. The pilot is kind of sets the stage, so we'll talk about that. This one in its entirety, but just to refresh you on the pilot, Mark Scout works in Lumen Industries macro data. Also shout out macro data refinement.
Nice.
He discovers he's being promoted to department head in light of his coworker Petey's sudden departure. His first task is to orient Helly, the replacement, who wakes up in a conference room with no memory of who she is or where she is. After she's given an orientation and learns her name, she demands and is allowed to leave, but finds she is unable. She watches a video explaining she has undergone the severance procedure, which splits her memories to create a version of herself that exists only, it will only exist inside the workplace. The outie version of Mark, a former professor grieving his wife Gemma's death and living in the Lumen subdivided town of Keir, encounters Petey, who claims to have reversed his supposedly permanent severance. Mark returns home and interacts with his neighbor, Mrs. Selvig, unaware that she is a senior manager, Harmony Cobell. So I'll stop there. Maybe we can start with Lisa. What was your first take on this pilot episode?
Well, I mean, obviously you are thrown into the point of view of Helly. You know, when you wake up, you're like, okay, I'm obviously fine. I'm dressed. Why am I on this table? Why is this person asking me questions about, like, what is my name? What is my mother's eye color? It's things like that, I guess. I can't quite remember what the questions were. But she's like, no, you let me out now. You know, it's like that whole thing of what's happening here. And it's really kind of interesting that anybody is actually acclimated at all into this procedure. When you wake up like that, you wake up in a room. Obviously they have to test to make sure that it took, which is the whole reason for that litmus test, right? But it's like, it's surprising to me that all of those people actually survived and more of them didn't react the way Helly did, and especially extremely down the line. But yeah, it was just like, what is this? I don't get it. I don't understand. And so you're like, okay, where's the answers? And that's just kind of what was going through my head when I was watching it first.
How about Sarah?
Well, I want to kind of talk about something really quick that Lisa touched on, which is Helly's extreme reaction, which I think only makes sense then when you find out that she is an Egan. So jumping forward, because I was like, that's it. She's entitled. She has the reaction of someone who's never had to do something she doesn't want to do. Hence her very extreme reactions. I was like, oh, that makes total sense. So I just liked that little character piece. And of course I love like Spitfire Helly, but like it totally fits with this, like, she's a Spitfire because like
deep down she's nenever had to.
Yes, it's like that she hasn't had to like fight for anything. So I don't know if that makes sense. But so just I only really had two big takeaways from the first one. I guess there were images that really stuck with me. One was the ball game where they had to roll the ball and say something. It was just so inane and stupid. And I think we've all been workers in that situation, playing these dumb games where we're just like, yeah, like, is this really going to let us get to know each other? Like, so I loved that. And then I just need to give a shout out to my boy. What's his name? Kyle?
Which guy?
The wife.
Which one?
The one who wrote the psychology. Rickon! My boy Rickon!
Oh, I love Rickon.
Because I was seriously disturbed by the dinnerless dinner party. Like, I was actually angry. I would be so mad if I went to that party and he didn't serve me anything and I had to sit there and talk to him. Oh, worst party ever. So,
I will never understand Devin and Rickon. I don't get it at all. Yeah. But you're not supposed to, you know.
But I did like it because it sort of matched up with the bizarre things that were happening at work. Mm-hmm. It's like it's no different in the outside world. There's still these weird, bizarre rituals that you do for the people you love. And so I kind of liked that it sort of showed these two things, like you're supposed to love your work. And so you play this ball game or you go through these rituals at work. And then it's like, oh, you're supposed to love your family. So then there's these like family rituals that are like no less absurd when you think about it than the work rituals. So I kind of liked that those two scenes were like paired up. So
well, and like I think the show over and over demonstrates the stupidity and the danger of dogma. Mm-hmm. And like, you know, it's really pointing out that like what you hold to be true and really important is really just what you're exposed to. Right. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's why like they all worship, you know, Keir and praise Keir and everything. And, you know, they find his crappy self-help book, but it's the only thing they have that's not, you know,
so it's elevated to the level of the Bible.
It's the new religion, you know what I mean? And he's this, you know, prophet figure to them, but we know because we see his outie, he's a freaking idiot, you know. So I feel like it's really commenting, you know, on all forms of like, you know, being a zealot, whether that's to your country or to your religion or to your just belief system. Mm-hmm. If you see behind the curtain, it's all kind of ridiculous.
Oh, it's fair. How about Rachel? What's your take on the first pilot?
So in the initial episode, I was intrigued by the concept, but so one of the things I said before is I feel like this show's all icing no cake. I was more interested in the visuals. So for example, the initial scene with so in the initial scene with Helly, I replayed it multiple times because I was intrigued by the camera, and like they go around the whole room and there's never a break, and I was like, where are the cameras? Like, I was trying to figure out the cinematography. So like, that's, to me, that says a lot about the show, because I didn't care about the story. I was like, but wait, where are the cameras? Like, I didn't care. And the interesting thing, you know, Sarah, you mentioned that you thought that Helly's entitlement was why she reacted that way. I feel like her reaction was like anybody would react that way. You wake up in a room, you're locked in a room, and nobody will let you out. Like, who wouldn't act like that? Like, who would just be like, okay, I'm just here? You know, I guess some people would, but so I didn't feel like her. I felt like her reaction was normal, and we'll get to it, because I think, Kyle, you're going through it like episode by episode. We'll get to, like, I did find Helly interesting in the beginning, and then I was over her after a while. But like, we'll I don't want to. I'll wait till we get to that part. But I did find her interesting in the beginning, and I liked her Spitfire nature. But like I said, I was more interested in the visuals, and I was waiting for the story to unfold. I was like, and here's the thing with me, because I watch a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, or I consume a lot of sci-fi fantasy media, whether it's books or TV shows or movies or whatever. And there's just two very important things in those worlds, and that's world building and character development. So I was waiting for the world building. I'm like, okay, they need to give me the context that these characters are navigating, so that I understand how I feel about the things that they're going through. And honestly, I'm still waiting for it. I'm still waiting for that context. And then also, Lisa, with regard to Devin and Rickon, they've got to give me some backstory there, because that makes no sense. That relationship makes absolutely no sense. He's an idiot, and she's obviously smart. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. So, yeah, that was my thoughts.
Nice. Jackie, are you? I can't tell if you're off. You're just doing. There we go.
Hi. Well, I really like what Rachel just said, because also, I want to preface this by saying, I don't know how y'all remember, like, I haven't seen the first season in like 3 years, so I might be a little vague in my contributions, but I really like what Rachel was saying about like the world building, and that's been like a conflict for me, because it's like, I feel like it is this commentary of how we are doing like a job, but don't know the like exact origin or reason why we're doing it, and we like may never know, but also at the same time I really want to know. But I mean, overall, I guess like just thematically, I was super intrigued as a teacher, because as a teacher I do feel like I have to really like turn into a different person, like very much like dehumanize, like desexualize, like just I'm this like vessel for this job. So I've always just been really intrigued by that, because I think I do that in a sense. But yeah, that's it.
Cool. Did anyone initially, before the rest played out, want to be like, oh, that sounds like pretty good, like I would sever myself?
You would?
No, without like the rest of the episodes, like after the first one, did it intrigue anyone? You like that?
So, yeah,
It's just too weird.
Yeah.
Well, for me, because it goes back to the whole world building. They didn't tell me enough about this world to tell me how different it is from our current world. And so as a woman and as a Black woman, like, the world is cruel to me when I'm fully conscious and staring it in the face, so I'm definitely not going to give an employer control over my body when I'm unconscious. Like, that's just never going to happen. So like, unless they tell me that this world is some sort of paradise and there's some reason why I would want it, like, they didn't give me a reason to want to do it. So it was like, yeah, absolutely not.
So that's what I actually made a note about. I said, why would these characters do this? And we know why Mark would do it. He's trying to escape his grief. We kind of know why Dylan did it, because he's, as he said himself, he's a fuck up, and so he's trying to find some place where he can actually excel, right? We don't really know why Erd is doing this, but we do understand a little bit later on, and it's for different reasons. We don't understand why Helly would do it, but it is frightening, because like, literally, you understand that you, like, the elevator doors close and then they open again, and that's it. That's all you know of life. It's actually terrifying.
Yeah.
So sorry, Jeremy.
Well, I do think they make it really clear that your financial compensation is very nice for doing this. And I feel
the Annie doesn't experience that. The Audi does, right? Yeah.
Right, but it's the Audi making the decision to create the Annie.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I agree. It's a really chilling premise, because like, I was thinking about not only the Audi, your life feels a lot shorter because you are in the building for most of your day.
Yeah.
So you only really exist at night, right? Like that in itself is kind of depressing and kind of creepy. And then, you never remember work. But then also, like, I started thinking about the innies and how we think, well, you would die. You would die if you never get to sleep. No, but they are sleeping. They just don't remember sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking about like what the human brain might be capable of if it could maintain a train of thought like that. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, where I hope they go in season 3 is I think Severance itself is a way more interesting concept than the lore they built around it. And so I would almost like to see, I don't know if we're going to do season 3 predictions at the end, right, Kyle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but that sort of speaks to one of my 25 initial questions after the which was one of my questions was, why was Irving having both his innie and his Audi having bleed over vision?
Yeah.
So his innie was
not an airtight procedure. Yeah.
What'd you say?
I said it's obviously not quite an airtight procedure like they do believe that it is, which is what they're trying to, the whole experiment with them is what they're trying to do, right?
Right.
Trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Sarah has some good
It was
theories.
super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. But we can talk about like the whole
Okay.
reverse of Irving and Helly later. I know you had that article, which I thought was good. Anyway, let me go, since we're half hour in, we're only on episode 1. I thought for these other ones, I'll just read brief updates, and then if you want to chime in on it, go and do it. But we don't have to go, and then we'll pause for the big ones. So episodes 2 and 3 together. It shows the previous day, Helly undergoing the severance procedure as a new employee and planning the microchip. Helly's introduced to her coworkers, Dylan and Irving, who are instructed that her job is to sort encrypted numbers into categories. During a welcome party headed by VIP Seth Milchick, MVP, Helly attempts to escape by writing her outside self a resignation note, but the elevator shuts down due to Lumen's built-in code detectors, which prevent unauthorized communication between selves. Mark claims responsibility and is put in the break room as a punishment. Irving hallucinates and sees a black liquid covering his desk and is administered a wellness check where the counselor, Ms. Casey, recites vague facts about Irving's Audi, with Irving forced to react neutrally. At the wellness center, Irving meets Bert, head of the 2-person optics and design department. Outside, PD explains he has reintegration sickness from reversing his severance. PD tells Mark of the break room and plays a recording of Mark being forced by Milchick to repeatedly recite a stringent apology. Mark gives PD shelter in his house. While taking a shower, PD hallucinates and collapses. PD then tells Mark mysterious benefactors helped him undergo the reintegration procedure. While Mark is at work, his sister and brother-in-law Rickon deliver the latter's self-help book, The You Are, to his doorstep, which Cobell steals and takes to Lumen to check for hidden messages. As she searches Mark's house, PD recognizes her and flees, suffering more hallucinations and eventually collapsing at a convenience store. Helly learns her resignation request to her Audi has been denied. Mark thwarts her various attempts to smuggle other messages to her Audi. To help her understand while she's working at Lumen, Irving suggests they show her the office's perpetuity wing, which documents the history of Lumen's founder, Keir Egan, and his succeeding dynasty. After attempting another escape, Helly is taken to the break room, where Milchick forces her to repeatedly recite an apologetic passage. Near the shift's end, Mark finds a hand-drawn map of Lumen's hallways left for him by PD. After work, Mark follows ambulance traffic to the convenience store and witnesses PD being carried away by paramedics. He rushes home to hide evidence of his stay and is interrupted when PD's cell phone rings. So I'll stop there. First of all, to me, this is when the show, especially the Perpetuity Wing, when I really was kind of like, oh, this is not just a comedy about cutting your brain in half. This is a thing. So I'm curious what anyone's takes are on that, especially either the Perpetuity Wing or the other stuff. Yeah, Lisa, go ahead.
Well, yeah, so the thing that really made me pop up in this show and go, okay, now I'm really like, I like to have things just fed into my eyeballs sometimes, and then I like process it later. But when she was put into the break room, and we didn't know what the break room was, and then I saw what they did, I'm like, okay, now we're talking about, not only we're talking about workers' rights, we're talking about human rights, we're talking about slavery, we're talking about torture. He essentially tortures her mentally, right, in order to get this out of her. how many times she have to repeat it, like over 1,000 times, like 1,300 times or something like that. I mean, and I was like, holy crap. And then we haven't gotten to the part where the retirement party yet. Sorry, I don't want to jump up ahead, but
But
there was yeah.
No, I was gonna say with regard to the break room, and this is part of when I was interested in Helly. Like, she's like, oh, I loved her when she thought she was gonna she wasn't coming back when she sent her resignation and the doors are closed. She was like, I was never sorry. I was like, I love her. She was like, right. I was never sorry.
Yeah,
that's what she was interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that. But so I am going to jump ahead just because it's like these are like things I was connecting the dots when Herb was retiring, and I said not Herb, sorry, Bert was retiring, and Herb goes in there and says, "You're killing him," and I was like, "What? No!" And then I was like, "Oh, right, he will no longer exist. Bert Inney will no longer exist. And it's essentially murdering him, right?" Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is so like out of the box thinking that I'm just like crazy, which is why I was like, why would anybody even want to do this? You know, it's like it just makes no sense whatsoever. Which is then I'm like, what's the purpose of this? Why are they moving these bullshit numbers around? Right? Why are they doing all that stuff? You know, so I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop talking because I could just go on forever.
Yeah.
Well, can we talk about macro data refinement real quick?
Yeah.
Like their task, right? Because I mean, I think like as a metaphor, it's really obvious, right? Like so many people work in office jobs, and their job is the numbers, and the numbers TPS reports, and you send them, but you don't even really understand the tangible reality of what you're doing. And obviously, in season 2, we'll get to what exactly that is. But that's like kind of like how Severance itself, the concept is sort of more interesting than the story they figured out. I think I was a little let down by the whole number sorting thing. It just, it's very Lost-esque. Remember the hatch, and they have to input the numbers, but then they later discover like, oh, the number that's not doing anything. Which is really funny. This is a real quick tangent, but they made an Xbox. They made an Xbox game for Lost, where you had to put in the numbers, and if you don't, the whole world explodes, because the people making the game didn't know what the numbers meant either. And now the fans are, you know, so yeah, I hate doing my grades. My grade book is my hell. So I did understand the numbers hell on the screen and how kind of existentially torturous that is.
Yeah.
Originally, I thought everybody was in some sort of lab rat experiment. That's what I thought. I was like, these numbers are bullshit. They were just watching them. And then you discover that's not the issue here. It's something else, but it's not really what they're doing. They're doing something for Lumen, right? Here.
Right.
Yeah. Can I go on a wellness rant?
Do it.
Uh-oh.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Well, I just love how this show, the thing it does well is like the sort of like total incompetence of or like not even incompetence, purposelessness of these departments, such as wellness. When it's like the system that is making you unwell created this department. You know, like the system that is like, and all they're doing for you is giving you tools to behave properly in the system they created to make you unwell.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like even a metaphor for honestly like therapy and psychiatry. I saw that. Like I've been to a lot of like situations where it's like, here are the tools to make you function in this society, right? That's what it's there for. But like, okay, what if like I'm not meant to function well in a society like the one I'm in? And
like that.
I think like I really like how it like spotlighted that.
Definitely.
That's amazing.
Could you guys hear me clapping in the background?
No, I didn't.
I love that so much, babe. That is so happy.
What was your take, Rachel, on the introducing this world of the founders and everything before?
I didn't care. I could not have cared less. I really didn't. I was like, oh, okay. Again, from a world building perspective, I was like, okay, great. So we're going to get a little bit more, but then we got nothing. It was just, again, it was just the visuals of the wax statues and the house and everything. And I was like, okay, but tell me something, give me some meat, you know? So I was like, okay, I got nothing out of that. So yeah.
I was actually really interested in that because my biggest takeaway from the show is like, I really thought the show was going to be about work culture. And like, I think it's about religion.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think it's about work at all. I mean, it is kind of saying that work can be a religion or maybe capitalism or something like that. But it's like, I think it's more like kind of what Jeremy was saying earlier about like belief and religion than it is. So I think to me, those parts were the most interesting, like Irving and Bert, like kind of like falling in love over the dogma and the quoting Egan back and forth to each other.
The tote bag.
Yeah. Yes, the tote bag. Yeah, I love the swag, you know. That's even like MLM style, like culty behavior. Like, oh, we're getting our new swag. I don't know. I like loved all that stuff. And I have more to say about it later, but
my personal opinion.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when you're talking about, Sarah, when you're talking about the show being about religion versus work culture, I don't think the show knows what it's about. I think that's why it took 3 years for it to come out with season 2, because they're still trying to figure it out. I think that the show is an interesting premise that they haven't figured out how to deliver. I just think they had an interesting idea and they're still trying to figure out. They're just trying to make it as weird as possible. I've given Kyle this challenge in the chat. I was like, watch the episodes on mute and with captions, because I feel like, because this is why they won the Emmy for the scoring. The music is so brilliant. The music is what's creating the tension and what's like moving you along, making you like stay. But then like, because when I realized that that's what was happening, I muted it and I turned on captions. So I was like, I don't want you to tell me how I should feel. I don't want the music to tell me how I should be feeling in this scene right now. I just want to watch the scene and decide how I feel. And without the music, I'm like, don't care. You know, like I'm
curious. What's your Sarah and I have complicated backgrounds with religion and deep interest in cults. That's my number one thing in the world is cult documentary. I'm curious what your background is on that, because that was like when I immediately was like, okay, now I'm in, especially the Scientology style break room, which is exactly what happens, what they do.
RPF.
RPF.
Rehabilitation Project Force.
Yeah. And so then I was like, okay, this show has things to say. And that's why for me, like that is the world that they're laying out. But if you don't come from that world, it may not be as resonant, you know?
But see, my argument, I'm going to answer your question in a second, but part of my theory is that I think that you have a very creative imagination and you're filling in gaps where there is no story. I think that each individual viewer is creating the story because there's nothing there. So everybody's got their own theory about what the show is about because there's no actual story that the show runners are giving you. But to answer your question, I was raised Christian, my family's Christian, but I'm currently, I don't know, I suppose folks would call me agnostic, but it's really just, I don't care. I think that you don't need to have a higher being or a higher calling or fear of damnation and eternal damnation to just do right by your fellow citizens. I think you can just be a good person without religion or any kind of dogma or anything like that. So, and I have no experience with cults. I do have, one of my theories is that Lumen Industries is a worldwide cult in this world. I don't know, because again, this is one of my 25 questions. Like, what is it? I don't know.
Sounds like Rachel needs a trip to the prosperity wing or perpetuity wing.
Okay, that'll get you all sorted out.
Let's make you a believer.
I feel.
That's right. All right, let's keep it moving and go. So I'm going picking up a little bit now. Episodes 4 through 6. Mark stashes away Petey's phone, noticing several missed calls from the same blocked number. The next day, Irving visits O&D, where he grows closer to Bert. He discovers Rickon's book left behind by Milchick. Mark keeps the book, despite promising to give it to management. Helly returns from the break room after being forced to apologize 1,000 times. Mark shreds Petey's map after it's found by Helly. She finds a paper cutter and threatens self-mutilation unless she's granted a recorded resignation request. However, her outie sends back a recording firmly denying the request and her innie's personhood. Later that night, Mark receives news reporting that Petey has died. Mark and Cobell, as Mrs. Selvig, attend the funeral, during which Cobell secretly extracts Petey's severance chip. She then has Miss Casey perform a special wellness session on Mark. Casey has Mark sculpt his emotional state out of clay. Mark sculpts a tree, which is Audi visited in remembrance of Gemma after Petey's funeral. Irving discovers that O&D actually has at least 7 employees working in a massive unlabeled back room. Helly smuggles an extension cord and hangs herself in an elevator. She's injured by her suicide attempt, but ultimately survives, returns to work 3 days later. Mark continues to read Rickon's book, which carries strong anti-establishment sentiments. Outside work, Mark visits Devin and Rickon at a birthing lodge where Devin gives birth. When Helly returns, Cobell orders Ms. Casey to watch her closely, but Mark sneaks Helly out of MDR and reveals he's been recreating Petey's map. When Mark tries to convince Helly to help with the recreating the map, she initially refuses, but then agrees. Bert admits to Irving and Dylan he lied about the size of O&D due to MDR being seen as untrustworthy. They realize Lumen is pitting the departments against one another. Bert takes the two back to O&D's back room and introduces them to his employees. Finally, Lumen Security Chief Doug Grainer informs Cobell he has identified ex-employee Ragabi as responsible for Petey's reintegration. Irving and Bert admit their feelings to one another, but Irving admits he's not ready to commit to a relationship. Mark has Irving introduce MDR to O&D, where he calls for the departments to work together to uncover Lumen's secrets. However, Milchick finds him and sends Mark to the break room. Milchick later briefly awakens Dylan's innie inside his Audi's home to locate a card that Dylan stole from O&D, leading Dylan's innie to discover he has a son. Cobell, as Mrs. Selvig, gets close to Devin and Rickon by acting as their lactation consultant. Mark goes on a date with Alexa, Devin's midwife, to a concert by Petey's Petey's daughter's punk rock band, and sings to an anti-Lumen protest song. Later, Mark finally answers Petey's phone and is contacted by Ragabi to meet at a nearby university. Cobell orders keycard locked doors to be installed at the entrance to MDR. So, Jeremy, what was your take as things start heating up here?
What's my take on those 16 things you just mentioned?
Yeah,
Jesus Christ! Like that.
We got a lot to cover. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna hit. To me, I think the most interesting thing, and then like the biggest missed opportunity thus far.
Yeah.
Irving and Christopher Walken's character. What was his name?
Bert.
Irving and Bert. Their romance, right? The tension between them was so palpable. That was so good.
Mm-hmm.
And then and this might be a problematic want. I don't know. Okay. But to have their Audis also be outwardly gay men, I was like, that is a storytelling opportunity that I wanted to see the complications of. Like, what would you do if you realized that your like Audi was a different sexuality than you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, and isn't that a perfect metaphor for people exploring their wants and desires? And some part of me wants to be with a man.
Yeah,
I didn't know, you know what I mean? And I think that's the most interesting.
Okay, that
Again,
actually totally relates to what I was saying about how we desex. Like, teachers totally pretend to be straight.
Mm.
Oh yeah,
Am I making sense?
100%.
Is this
No. We all had that teacher that we knew was gay, but they couldn't say it
Right.
because it
No,
was
They couldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
See, again, I think this goes back to my point, Jeremy. You have a better imagination than the writers.
No, I don't. I love the fire you're bringing to this. Okay, don't let me extinguish that at all, because that was me with Pink Flamingos. But I think this is well made enough that the conversations we are having were intentional.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're keeping it all vague, loosey goosey, and not explaining as much as you'd like, so that we have to go down these roads and have these conversations. Because we focused on the like lore, that's not the important part. It's a distraction. I think maybe intentionally.
Mm-hmm. What? Yeah, go ahead, Lisa. Yeah.
I was just saying we haven't talked about Cobell enough.
Yeah.
Tashara Cat is amazing in this role.
Yeah.
And she disappears into this role. It's really kind of crazy. And she has some sort of weird fixation on Mark and Ms. It's Gemma. Who is it? Mark and Gemma, right? And we don't know, obviously, the things that she knows, but she seems to put them in those situations. And she's watching them and looking at them, and she lives next door to him. Do they know that? Does Lumen know that she lives right next door to Mark? I don't think it's weird.
She wasn't supposed to be doing that. She got in trouble.
Right. You know, so it's just like, but her whole thing is like, she is like here all the way. We don't know how deep. We learn later on how deep, but she's what she is doing is really trying to uncover what's really going on, including fishing out the lumen chip, which actually probably shouldn't be there if he's been embalmed, but hey, that's okay. It's a television show where we'll suspend our disbelief. But because all the organs are removed, I believe, right? When they embalm somebody for burial, I think. I don't know too much about that, but I was kind of like, okay, that's fine. But then it's like she put it in a necklace and she wears it, or somebody wears it. I can't quite remember. So I was just like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she wears it like a necklace.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the chip. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Kyle, you've done a season 1 rewatch since season 2.
I've dabbled with Sarah when she was rewatching it a little bit. So.
Okay, so were there clues? I'm sorry if this is jumping the gun, but we're discussing her character.
Yeah.
Were there clues that she invented the technology? Because that's the one thing where I was like, her dialogue does not sound like what someone who invented this would be saying.
I think my read on that was that she was like still by the book and still, I've got to lower myself to make, the Egans high up. And then once they started screwing her, then she's like, okay, now I've got to, take what's mine, essentially. Like she snapped essentially in season 2.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was going to note too, but speaking of things that season 1 teaser stuff that I didn't notice on the first watch, I was interesting when she was breaking in to the basement of Mark's place and she took Gemma's candle and then put that candle in the session.
That's what I was talking about.
To kind of test the boundaries. And that was like a season 1. I was like, oh, I noticed that before. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I mean, she is pushing it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Sarah, go ahead.
Oh, me or did Jeremy want to talk?
Either way.
I always want to talk.
Oh,
so you should go first.
Me too.
I just wanted to touch on a few like religious things that I liked. So one of the things I really liked is all the like melon parties. Because I felt like
parties.
It's like this clean, sanitized version of fun. It's like this prescribed fun, and I feel like that's very on brand for like church fun. It's like, oh, we're gonna have a great time in this like very prescribed way. Like it's like going to youth group. You know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, isn't this fun? And everyone's talking about how fun it is, but like nothing you're doing is actually that fun. Like sometimes, yes, but it's like everyone's like looking at it. Isn't this great? Isn't this fun?
Okay.
And I love the moment when they have one of the parties where they get to choose one instrument. Like you may choose one.
Oh, the dance experience. Yeah.
And it would cost them nothing to let everyone grab one, but it's like, oh no, we can't do that. Like you may choose one instrument. And I really like that. And then like I thought it was interesting too. Again, I feel like this show's really critical of religion. Oh, another thing I wanted to say is the whole idea of like splitting your mind. I feel like that is something that religion forces you to do, because it's like asking you to adopt all these beliefs that maybe you don't really believe in, or that you feel like it's illogical. And so you kind of have to split your logical mind and become this like dual-minded person. Like, oh, do I really think like this person raised from the dead? Do I really think like Adam and Eve in the garden? Like, I don't know. But then it's like, then you always have like your logical mind, but then you have this spiritual. And there's even like a Bible verse in James where it says that if you like, basically like if you don't have faith, you're a double-minded man, unstable in all that you do. And I remember always reading that and being like, I'm double-minded, because like I can never escape my logical brain. Like, and always feeling like I was like a big sinner because of that. Because like, maybe I'm never like worthy of being like saved or being like a true believer, because it's like I always have the two minds. So it's like I really like the two minds as a like symbol of religion. And then like I thought it was interesting how in the flashbacks too, he and Gemma had this house with like personality and books and light and plants and color. And then now he's living in a shitty, like, personality-less row house. You know what I mean? Which I just thought sort of symbolized, like, I mean, even in the Bible, there's a parable about like cleaning your house, right? Like getting rid of your bad habits. Like, I don't know. I'm probably going a little too far with the religious symbolism, but I just thought the way the house is so clean and sterilized, I don't know, just reminded me like, okay, these people had like lives and personalities before, and it's like this severance procedure or this like religious affiliation that has kind of turned them into these sterilized, personalityless beings.
Yeah.
But was it the religious affiliation or his depression about the loss of his wife?
I mean, I think that's why he went to it.
Right.
But I mean, a lot of people do go to religion when they're struggling with something. Like that's a textbook case for like, you know, people reaching for something.
No, I meant the change in his environment before he, like, I feel like he would have had that change
I don't
in
know.
environment.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he could have left, but I got the impression that it was like corporate housing, so that it came with Severance.
Yeah.
Because I thought it said something about it was that it was owned by the company. But
like that is such. I'm glad you mentioned the thing about his wife being dead, because I have two things to say about it. Is that one, that's what's so heartbreaking about Mark as a character, is that he did this so that there would be a version of him that doesn't know how depressed he is. Right? So it's the
literal compartmentalization of his sorrow, right?
Right. But in every other character, their outie is taking advantage of their innie, and this is his outie being like, no, like I want some part of me to be free of this pain.
Right.
And that, you know, and then that leads me to the Miss Casey, because you mentioned the therapeutic session. And like I love the twist that that's his former wife, because the sexual tension in that scene is palpable. Like it's fucking hot, the therapy scene between him and Miss Casey, and you're like, why is this so horny right now? And it's like it's because their chemistry knows no severance, right? Like, I mean, even in a scientific, you know, Rachel talks about like, you know, rule following world building. It's like, well, their hormones are still the same. So of course they're still gonna be attracted to each other.
This is interesting too. Like you were talking to Rachel about the bleeding between the black goo and the other one. Sarah, I don't know if you want to talk about your Helly Irving thing the article you were sharing about their other personalities.
I actually can't even remember that article right now.
It was essentially like the fact that her rebellious nature on the inside versus who she was on the outside.
Oh, yeah. Well, I did think it was interesting. Yeah, I thought it was interesting that Irving too was the most. Like on the outside, he was actually the one tracking down people and figuring it out. But on the inside, he was this biggest believer. And I thought that tracked with me. Because I feel like people who are very like into like religion, they can be like its fiercest critic when they flip. Yeah, it's like you think of like Leah Remini and, you know, her Scientology series and stuff like that. It's like that's kind of what Irving's arc reminded me of. So,
yeah. I think you're kind of about the hormones. It's like something about your brain is permeating through. It's like you're still the same. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing I would say about the episode you just covered, Kyle, is this is when I said, you know, I thought Heliar was interesting in the beginning. I do not condone suicide, but I love the way that she chose to do it, which is on her way up the elevator so that her outie would see that she did this to her. I was like, that was so badass.
Brutal. Brutal.
Like, oh, you think I'm not a person? I'm going to show you what kind of person I am. You know, like, I love that. Again, I don't condone suicide.
The discounting of the innies as entities, as beings is crazy.
Right.
Well,
she's
retaking control. You know, she's demanding her personhood at the expense of her life, and you're like, that's really cool.
Exactly.
Because to her, it's not suicide; it's murder.
Right.
She knows she's gonna disappear, and the outie version is gonna suffer. So she's not killing herself. I mean, I guess she is. Oh, this show's so interesting, Rachel. Come on, this is a good show.
That was the last interesting thing that happened in season 1 until the end, until the season finale.
All right, I'm gonna keep pressing. Unless Jackie have anything else, otherwise I'll keep going, and then you can chime in if you have anything. Okay, perfect. Let's move. Fine. Oh, we're almost at the end of season 1. 7 and 8. While Mark is meeting with Ragabi, Grainer enters the building following a tip from campus security. Ragabi kills Grainer and gives Mark his access card, telling him to take it to his innie. Milchick engages in an MDR music dance experience with the department as a prize for Helly. Dylan refuses to participate and eventually attacks Milchick, enraged that he can't know more about his child. After Milchick leaves, Dylan tells the rest of MDR about Lumen's ability to wake them up outside the severed floor, known as the overtime contingency. The MDR team uses Grainer's card to regain access to the hallways. Mark and Helly scheme to find the security office. Inside, they find out how the overtime contingency is activated. Dylan offers to stay behind after hours to wake the others up on the outside. Irving departs to O&D, worried about Bert's safety. Upon arrival, he discovers Bert is retiring and openly berates the non-severed Milchick for exploiting the severed employees. After work, Alexa visits a drunken Mark, who scares her off after ripping up a photo of Gemma. After she leaves, Mark reassembles the photo, revealing to us that it's Mrs. Casey. Irving's Audi lives outside in an apartment where he paints identical images of a dark corridor. Helly reaches 100% on her file, thereby meeting MDR's quota for the quarter. After a final wellness session with Mark, Ms. Casey is ordered by Cobell to be sent back down to the testing floor, whose entrance matches Irving's paintings. While MDR celebrates quota, Cobell is suspended by Lumen's board for withholding knowledge of Helly's suicide attempt and her avocational activities as Mrs. Selvig. The MDR team prepares for Dylan to remotely awaken them on the outside. Helly kisses Mark before departing. Mark's Audi attends Rickon's book reading party and tells Mrs. Selvig he plans to quit Lumen. She encourages him to do so. Dylan receives a waffle party as a reward for meeting quota, in which he dons a Keir Egan mask and sits within a replica of Keir's bedroom in the perpetuity wing while ritualistic and seductive dances are performed in front of him. Dylan leaves midway to access the security office and activate the overtime contingency to awaken Mark, Irving, and Helly's innies. Pause before the finale. Thoughts on that, especially the waffle party? I'm curious what your takes are, Jeremy.
He knows I have waffle party commentary.
I knew you would.
Well, I think Sarah's spot on by saying that this is a show about religion, and a lot of religions, it feels inspired by like Catholicism and like branches of Christianity where it's like you have to deny your sex drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
To give into that would be evil. And it's, Dylan, his reward is sitting there and watching these weird lingerie women like dance around as he wears a weird kinky mask. Cause you're not supposed to have sex in the office. Like any Dylan is a virgin.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And he has the sexual desires, but he's never felt what it's like to have sex. He's denying his sexuality.
Right. That's right.
And like there's some comedian who talked about how like kinky confession is, and like these poor priests who have to dress in this like big elaborate outfit and sit in a dark room where someone whispers their sexy secrets through a wall. You know what I mean? It's like the hottest thing you can imagine, but that guy's not allowed to have sex. Like that's part of it.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. I forget which comedian said that, but like that's the dark comedy to me of the waffle party. But Kyle, if I can not talk about the weird kinky waffle party, I'm flattered you called on me for that one.
I knew I felt it. I thought of you immediately. Yeah.
I think this is the point we have to talk about Mr. Milchick, like the MVP of the show. Such a compelling character. Like simultaneously endearing and like kind of threatening, but you don't know why, and the musical dance experience.
So
my God.
The tragedy of Mr. Milchick to me is that he really cares about this. And he's the person at work who's just in for it and really, really cares. And an amazing smile, Sarah. Like, I think we all watch a Milchick series. Like hands
100%.
down.
That's
100%.
one of my. We'll get to it. That's one of my season 3 wishes. Anyway, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a huge fan of that character and that who plays him.
Something Trammell.
His name is Trammell. Dang it, I have it right here. Trammell. He's amazing.
It's a 10 out of 10 performance. It's like
great.
Trammell Tillman. If anybody saw, I think it was the Paley Fest. He actually got to bring in a marching band it was either Paley Fest or something like that. I saw it. I saw somebody who was there and taking it. And I was like, he's like living his best life right now. It's like he's not. It's like you see him do all these moves and things, and you're like, and he says, "No, I'm not a dancer. That just kind of came to me, So he's and what they do with his character is he's definitely the MVP. I totally agree with you.
So I want to. So 2 things. One about the marching band, but I did not find anything interesting about his character in season 1, but I did find him compelling in season 2.
They give him
Especially
more.
when he got the cure paintings. That's a whole different
Oh,
thing.
that's a
Yeah.
whole,
So yeah, I did find him compelling in season 1. I did find him compelling in season 2. With regard to the marching band, you know, in the final episode of season 2, I was like, did Mr. Milchek go to an HBCU? Is that where he learned his drum major moves? I was like, I was creating backstory because there is none, you know.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that.
How about Jackie? Any thoughts?
Well, I wanted to just talk about the waffle party a bit more and sexuality, because I just think it's really interesting, like the morality of it. Because, like, if the innie is sexual, is it moral to be sexual and the outie doesn't know? Like, I just think that's maybe what it's commenting on, is like, how do we let these innies like satisfy these urges in a way where it doesn't complicate the innie outie like dynamic? And I don't know, just thinking about that. Yeah.
To that point, I don't know if you picked up on the news stories, because again, I'm always looking for the world building. There was a news story in season 1, just on the TV in the background during another, I don't even remember what scene it was, but they talked about, you know, they were talking about the controversy of Severance, and they talked about an innie who got pregnant, you know, without the outies' knowledge and consent. And so I was like, again, I was like, tell me more about like this controversy that's going on in the world and what people are talking and what's happening. And it was just like this background thing. And I was like, I want to know more about this world. So to the point that Jackie was making about that.
Totally.
Yep.
Sarah, do you have any thoughts?
Not really for this section. I kind of said all the stuff I wanted to say about season 1 so far.
Lisa, do you want to do the finale? Chime in.
No, I'm good. Just do the finale.
We'll keep moving. It's a lot. Okay, season 1 finale. Mark's innie awakens in Devon's home and finds himself hugging, quote unquote, Mrs. Selvig. While excusing himself to find Devon, he calls Cobell by name, alerting her that the overtime contingency has been activated. Cobell calls Milchek to warn him. Mark privately reveals to Devon that he is his innie. Devon tells him of Gemma's death and learns that Mrs. Selvig is Mark's boss. Irving wakes up in his apartment, discovering his outie's paintings, and finds a map and employee directory, which he uses to locate Bert. Helly wakes up at a Lumen gala where she learns that her outie is Helena Egan, the daughter of Lumen CEO James Egan, who underwent severance as a publicity stunt. Cobell races to the gala and attempts to stop Helling from making a scheduled speech. Helly gets on stage and tells the crowd of the innie's subjugation and torment. Irving arrives at Bert's house only to find Bert is already in a relationship. Mark finds a photo showing Ms. Casey to be Gemma. He rushes to tell Devon, but is only able to say she's alive before Milchek tackles Dylan, deactivating the overtime contingency and reverting the 3 to their outies. So, first of all, did anyone predict Helly's reveal before?
No.
I did not myself. Yeah, that kind of blew my mind.
It was a very good reveal.
Yeah.
And
I
so
will confess
chilling.
that was good.
Yeah.
Rachel's like, we got me. Okay.
No, I will confess that was very good. Yeah.
The whole finale was pitch perfect cliffhanger.
I agree.
Yeah.
You know, the chill that goes down your spine, going, oh my god, she's the CEO. This is all her fault. She's the one doing this to herself. So complicated.
Yeah.
And then
Well, and I finally got the answer to the question of why were they taking so many pictures?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I was like, why are they always taking pictures? And you see all of this propaganda, at this gala, so yeah.
And then, of course, the corporate apology that comes later of like, I had too many drinks. And it's like, oh, this is ripped straight from the headlines. Like that happens all the time where we get a glimpse of the truth and that, okay, cover it up, clean it up, create some news story to distract people. The she's alive. Adam Scott nailed the delivery of that. And then to wait 3 years for the resolution.
I know.
Yeah, it was so good. And then also I really love.
Sorry.
No.
I was saying I actually watched it over the summer and I was rewarded with, oh, here comes season 2.
Nice.
So that's how long I waited. And I didn't have to wait that excruciating long 3 years, which I'm sorry, you guys. I apologize.
No, I'm glad for you. But now you're in with us though, because now you're gonna. Well, I guess
That's right.
This time.
Who knows how much longer?
Yeah.
What was your take, Sarah?
Oh, I just thought it was a great finale. I really liked season 1. I liked season 1 better than season 2, actually.
Same.
A lot. Yeah.
And we didn't get to talk about it, but Dylan chooses to stay behind and not wake up in the real world.
Right.
Because he had already been turned on in the real world.
He knew.
And found out he had a son.
Yeah.
And like,
Mhm.
you know, I was wondering if like the parents in the stream could comment on that, because I thought like, what a gut-wrenching thing. And again,
Yeah.
a metaphor for like family separation, and like my child is out there, but I'm not allowed to see them. How is anything more cruel?
Yeah.
Well, again,
Yeah.
it's like that same thing. That's why people stay in religions that they don't want to stay, and they don't want to lose their family lots of times. Like, there's so many people in Scientology because their family's in it, and they will be cut off. So it's like the fact that it was his wife was in there, I thought was like the perfect note on that. It's like, and then of course season 2, like we haven't talked about it yet, but you know, his decision at the end, it's like, oh, my friends are here. Like, I don't know. It was just so, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. There were just so many things that spoke to me that as being related to, religion.
All right, let's go. Season 2, episode 1. This one, we'll pause after this one because it was a big one. Mark reawakens on the severed floor in a panic, running. I think he runs for like 5 solid minutes or something in the open.
I know.
He finds Miss Casey's wellness room decommissioned and his whole team replaced. Milchick, now running the severed floor, introduces Mark to his new deputy manager, Miss Wong, a child, and claims that 5 months have passed since the Macrodat uprising supposedly made Mark's team the faces of Severance reform. Milchick says while Mark's Audi asked to return to Lumen, the other 3 refused. Mark sabotages the new team as a distraction to reach the board and requests the other Ennies return. The next time Mark wakes up on the severed floor, he reunites with Dylan, Irving, and Helly. The 4 are taken to a renovated break room where Milchick promises better working conditions and offers the Ennie a choice to leave permanently or stay. Mark informs the group that what he learned while outside, while Helly lies about her Audi's identity. A distraught Irving nearly leaves over his heartbreak at Bert having a partner, but Dylan convinces him to stay. Milchick privately shows Dylan blueprints for an Audi family visitation suite. Having all chosen to stay, the team resumes its work. So did anyone recognize or read already who narrated the Macrodat uprising video that they had to watch? I don't know if you noticed it.
Was it Ben Stiller?
Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, that's
Nice.
right. I remember hearing that.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Sarah's in the John Wick universe. Oh.
Yeah, that's right. John Wick shout out.
Also, it's in some kind of it's in that stop motion, isn't it? Like a Santa Claus coming to town and stuff like that. And I was like, whoa, so like 1972. I was just like, wow, it's like crazy.
Yeah, it was wild. Did you initially think that they were going to like have the Stones to replace the cast with the new people? Or
No.
did you think that was yeah.
I actually did think that. And
Oh, wow.
I was, even though like I missed the old cast, I was kind of on board. Like I think it could have been almost more interesting to do that. I didn't think the second season was as good as the first, but because it just kind of felt like Lumen seemed very neutered of its power, because it's like they're just doing whatever these people want, and I couldn't quite figure out why. So
well, that's kind of the ongoing question. Is it seems like there's something about Mark, like there's definitely something about Mark, and everything centering around him. And the question is why? Why does he get everything he wants? Why is it his wife? Why was Mrs. Selvig / Mrs. Cobell so interesting? Like there's something about him. Why is he the center of everything?
Right. I have a theory. We'll share at the end, but yeah.
Okay. I will say, so the season 2 premiere was so disappointing because it was like a reset. It was like, oh, we're just going to go back to the beginning. We left you with this great cliffhanger, but now we're not going to deal with that right now. We're going to restart, and we're going to wait and give you 9 more episodes before we give you any more progress. One of my favorite quotes, though, or scenes in that one, when we talk about the child, when Dylan is like, "Why are you a child?" and she's like, "Because of when I was born." I was like, that's so good answer. I was like, that is such a good answer.
It is. It's so good. Jeremy, what were you going to say?
So much to say. The child's name, is it Miss Huang?
Miss Huang,
what's her character?
Yes.
Such a chilling concept, because like
I
this
know.
whole time we're like, okay, this is weird, but on some level they consented to it. And so the idea of someone just from their youth just being here in this office and never
Yeah.
seeing the sunshine, and
Mhm.
you know, you assume she's severed. They never make it totally clear, because like Milchick
But-
is down there, but he's not severed.
Isn't
Yeah, I
Miss
don't think so.
Cobell? I thought they mentioned that Miss Cobell had been the previous
Yeah.
They did.
Well, it's
yeah.
not until later
person,
in
and
the
she
season,
is
but
not
yeah.
severed. Yeah,
Right.
so I don't think she
No.
is severed.
No.
I think she's
Okay. My
No,
interpretation
but
was
she
severed.
agreed. Yeah, her parents agreed. They all agreed to this. But we find out a little bit more about this type of program with Cobell. Like Cobell was like one of the original ones in that youth program, whatever that was.
Yeah, the winter
This is-
something
So-
fellowship or whatever.
Yeah, this is
Winter
also
high, yeah.
this
Yeah.
is also
Do we-
straight up Scientology with the child labor working through the
Yes.
years to build up like full on, yeah, which is interesting.
But you know, the parts where it's like they allow like the family visitation wing, right? And it's like, in a way, like we're all going to work for our loved ones, you know what I mean? Like we put up with the office hell because we're supporting somebody, and it's like this very clear like manipulation in the show, but then it's also like, oh, that's just like, that's real life, you know? And like Mark's Eni having the chance to stay or go, and it's like any one of us could quit our job and deal with the fallout of being unemployed,
Mhm.
but we stay in our little, you know, Kiers or whatever the company is. The company called Kier?
Lumen.
No, Lumen.
Lumen. We all, we, in a way, we all have our own Lumen Industries. That's trapping us all,
Mhm.
right? Capitalism, Jackie. It's like a whole capitalism thing. Is there? I don't know if can I throw out a question about where I think they're going with the child character, or do you want me
Yeah.
to save that for?
No, go for it.
There's a non-zero chance that she is the child of Miss Casey and Mark, right? Like that there was
never
no
thought of that.
miscarriage, and in fact, they actually just
Except that she's too old.
is she?
Yeah.
That's the only. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's like 13 years old. I mean,
Yeah.
it's only been 2 years, I think, since
Yeah.
his wife died. 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's. I mean, yeah, but yeah, I mean, I get it. You know, that could be somehow. Who knows what kind of
I think
technology they have? Because
I feel like she was just introduced as a character to show us basically what might have been Miss Cobell once upon
That's
a
right.
time.
I think so too. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because Miss Cobell was, you know, one of the winners of the
Indoctrinated.
fellowship. Yeah, exactly. And she was
Mhm.
indoctrinated. She worked in the factory in her town when she was a kid and blah, blah, blah. So I felt like that was meant to show us what sort of how Miss Cobell became to be a
Became
zealot.
who she is. Yeah, exactly. All right, let me keep moving and we can jump in for the rest. So 2 and 3.
Yeah.
After the overtime contingency, Milchick is tasked with damage control and fires both Irving and Dylan. Irving lies to Milchick about his whereabouts that night. Helena, accompanied by her security chief, Mr. Drummond, badass guy, by the way, separately,
oh, he's amazing.
meets with Cobell and offers her a promotion as a reward for her loyalty, but Cobell's insulted at not being offered her old job back. Helena films an apology video, passing off her outburst at the gala as the result of intoxication. Milchick attempts to convince Mark to come back to work, but Mark decides to quit, much to the dismay of Devon, who's concerned that Gemma is alive. Dylan attempts to find a new job, but is discriminated against for being severed. Helena insists that Mark
Door
return.
factory.
Yeah. Helena insists that Mark must return to finish his latest file, Cold Harbor. Milchick convinces him to return by offering him a hefty pay raise and promises the happiness his Eni receives will trickle back to him. After hearing Mark's plea to the board, Milchick rehires Dylan and Irving while the board decides to send Helena back to work. Mark runs into Cobell while returning home and demands answers about Gemma, but she angrily drives off. Mark and Helly go to hand out missing persons posters of Miss Casey across the severed floor. The two stumble upon the Mammalians Nurturable Department, led by a woman named Lorne. Though initially hostile, the Mammalians promise not to hinder NBR's search for Miss Casey. Irving takes a poster to O&D where he runs into Felicia, who identifies his sketch of the dark hallway from his Audi's painting as the Exports Hall. Dylan's granted a visitation with his Audi's wife, Gretchen. Natalie approaches Rickon to discuss adapting the UUR for Innies. Cobell agrees to rejoin Lumen on the condition she's rehired as floor manager. Helena instead suggests an impromptu meeting with the board, prompting a spooked Cobell to drive off. Mark and Devon attempt to burn an afterimage into his retinas to communicate with his Innie. Ragabi interrupts Mark, telling him his strategy won't work, and reintegration is the only way to send messages in and out of Lumen. Mark agrees to the procedure after Ragabi confirms his wife is alive. As they begin conducting the process in Mark's basement, Mark flashes between the present and his orientation on the severed floor. So I'll stop there. Sarah had some initial thoughts, I know, on the goats in season 1. I'm curious where you landed with mammalians nurturable in this season.
I don't have much to say about mammalians nurturable. This is where I am kind of on the Rachel train, and I was like, is this a lost thing where they're just never going to explain those goats?
Like the
So
polar bear.
I was like, I don't know. Yes, it's weird, but I just don't know about it.
Well, the
But,
goats come up in the finale, but not in a way that felt earned. It was weird.
Not at all.
Yeah.
No.
I'm like,
I
when
did
else
wanna
were there
say-
goats sacrificed?
One
Oh,
thing
the
I did
Bible.
like
The Bible.
about
Yeah.
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 Oh, yeah. I mean, we did talk about the Lamb of God, pure Lamb of God, pure sacrifice, blah, 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 blah. So, and there was, why did that come up? I can't remember. There was one goat that didn't she say, like, oh, didn't they bring a goat in at one point? And they were like,
Yeah.
It's in
oh,
the
he's going.
finale.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
you
I'm
know,
jumping
and
ahead.
it's presented as if it's because they've reached this milestone. And I'm like, so what other milestones were reached that, required goat sacrifices? Again, I'm back to the, okay, tell me more.
But in the ancient Jewish culture, which is like, the first 5 books of the Bible is like, that records that the scapegoat was supposedly took on the sins of the community. So
Right.
the scapegoat was the symbolic figure that took on sin. So I felt like they were kind of going that way with the goats in the finale.
Yeah, this is where I'm
jumping ahead a
I'll
little.
talk at the end about that. Yeah. Any thoughts, Jeremy, on that whole?
Well, I believe you said that in the first 3 episodes of season 2 is where you get the subplot that Dylan's wife is visiting his innie and has way better romantic chemistry with the innie than the outie.
Yeah.
And that to me, that was the most interesting subplot. Like if I found out that Jackie was like macking on innie JMO, like I'm jealous of myself.
Yeah.
But it's just such an interesting thing though, because the outie Dylan is, like you said, kind of a screw up.
Yeah.
And so she's able to be with the version of him that's what he's good at. Like, he's good. What's Dylan good at? He's loyal, right?
And he's paying attention to her, because outie
Yes.
Dylan's not paying any attention
Right.
to her. Any Dylan's like super into her.
But it's also a false equivalency, because any Dylan has nothing else to do. Like, he doesn't have kids to raise. He doesn't have to buy groceries or pay bills, or like, it's a very false.
It's not fair. It's not fair.
Like, there's nothing else for him to do.
Yeah. And it'll come up in the finale, but I love Dylan's letter to himself of like, not cool, dude. Not cool, me. Kissing our wife. Like, it was just, it's just so complicated. And so, like, Rachel, that's why I'm surprised you hate it so much, because even though it's a really sloppy show, there's so many interesting kernels. But you're smiling, you're talking about it.
They're not popping. There's kernels, but they're not popping.
Okay, I'm popping. I'm popping. They pop.
Jackie.
I like what Jeremy said about, I don't know, just the ethics of consent. Like, how does that work? Like, is it just like, are we allowing non-consent? Because at the end of the day, like, our bodies will know. And we're the same body. So, like, is it just like, I don't know, like, how is it consensual when you're in the same body and then you did something that you didn't consent to? I just think that's interesting to think about.
It's interesting you say that. I know we haven't gotten to this episode yet, but there's a point at which Heliar says, when she finds out that Mark slept with her outie version, that she's like, she used my body. I'm like, it's the same body. They have this thing where they're thinking of their bodies as separate things. I'm like, no, it's just one body. It's 2 brains, theoretically, but one body.
The same body.
Yeah.
I also I don't know what the goats symbolize, but I appreciated the imagery of this, like, simulated, like, what work used to be in this, like, work place of modern times, this, like, gray, like, hellish landscape. Like, But also, I do agree with Rachel. Just like I felt like this whole season, I just wanted to know more. Wanted to know more. I wanted to know what it was saying. I mean, yeah, I like the imagery of these things being alive in this such a dead space, but that's really it. I also thought it was really interesting that like the severed are being discriminated against. Almost it reminds me of what we've been discussing with like a cult, where like if someone knew you were in that cult, can you ever recover your reputation? Because they knew you succumbed to that like dogma. So yeah, and it's how they keep you in, kind of with what Sarah's been saying this whole time about religion.
Yeah, like the others are criticizing you. You might as well stay in because we don't criticize you. Yeah,
right. But to me, it was also a commentary on like people who have elective surgery or like gender, reassignment surgeries, and it's like because Dylan is like, oh, you did that to yourself. You're severed. We don't hire severed employee. You know what I mean? And it's just the blatant discrimination. And I like what Jackie said about like the imagery of the goat land, because what gets the chuckle out of me is that there's like rolling hills that stop at like a cubicle wall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it reminded me of like Jackie was saying, like these wellness centers, like the concept of a wellness center is like, so you don't need to leave work to calm down and recover from work. And it's like, I don't know if you guys seen like wellness centers in real life, and there's like a fake tree in the corner, and it's like, it would make me feel better, an actual tree, like getting outside. Jesus, like, so I just love the absurdism of even the rolling goat hills it's segmented and it's unnatural. And it's there was a Comic-Con like escape room to promote season 2, and you were like in Lumen, and I'm dying to know if they had like the goat room. Like, that'd be dope.
Well, did anybody see the Union Station pop up?
Yeah,
that was amazing.
Yeah,
But
they put in, was it New York Union Station somewhere there?
It was New York, New York City, yeah.
They put the Lumen office in real life
in a cube.
Actual actors come in and work there while the crowds were going around.
Yeah, it was just like performance art, and like the real. People were like, "We're thinking about doing this," and then people were like, "We should do that." Like the actors were like, "We should go down there and do that," and they just had real. They just were doing stuff. Who knows what they were doing? But it was like people were like mesmerized.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, I'm gonna move forward.
Oh, looking at pictures, that's really dope.
Yeah.
Are those the actual actors?
Yeah, they had like the main.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
well done.
Cool. Okay, episode 4, Woe's Hollow, big one. MDR finds themselves in the outside world on a frozen lake. A pre-recorded message from Milchick informs them they're on an outdoor retreat and team building occurrence, Ortbo, and directs them to find the previously unrevealed 4th appendix to the Lumen Handbook written by Keir Egan by following the directions of strange doppelgangers of themselves. Upon taking the appendix to Woe's Hollow, a waterfall, they're greeted by Milchick in an incredible white outfit, I'll add, and Miss Huang, who have set up a campsite. Helly is confronted by Irving about her suspicious account of her time during the overtime contingency. She retorts by claiming Irving is bitter about Bert's retirement, causing Irving to storm off. Helly and Mark have sex, after which Mark briefly hallucinates Gemma's head on Helly's body. Irving sleeps outside, experiencing strange dreams. The next morning, Irving again confronts Helly. To force her to admit she's a mole, he yells for Milchick and begins drowning Helly in Woe's Hollow. Helly reverts to her innie after calling Milchick by his first name, Seth, which is unknown to the MDR, telling him to do it. Milchick then fires Irving and reverts him to his outie. So, did you expect this episode when it hit, for those who watched it? Maybe Lisa?
No, it was, and people will say, I knew that was outie Helly, and I was like, did you really? I don't know. I mean, there was like, obviously, I would not want to tell my fellow innies that I am the daughter of the CEO of Lumen. I wouldn't want to. So that seems normal, right? So, but I was like, what is he doing? He's going insane. And then you see exactly what he's doing. But it's all crazy because it's not work to Irv anymore. It's real. They're a group. They're a family. And he's like, this person is betraying us, and I'm going to make you acknowledge it. And it happens. It all happens. But of course he gets fired, But this season we learned so much more about, or at least we learned bits more about Lumen, about history, and the history of how they got started with ether ether, which is like, okay, so is it medical, or is it like you can literally put yourself out and then you can actually probably, I think you can do things on ether, like, and not remember them. Like, it's just like, it's a crazy, I guess it's a drug, but you learn that, and you go to her home, to Cobell's hometown, and it's like a ruined mess with people, drug addicts all over the place. And I'm like, this sucks. What is this company? I don't really understand that. And obviously it's more than just a company. It's, some sort of a cult as well. But what's the purpose of it all? And it's all kind of coming to a head. And I wanted to know, what is the purpose? What is Cold Harbor? What is happening here? And so I'm just like, I want to know what's happening. We don't quite get the answers, but we get further.
What would you, this is the one thing I didn't have an answer to, and I don't know if it was just exactly but what were the doppelgangers? Like, did anyone? Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're above them. I think they're above them, right?
No,
yeah, or at all.
When
they're seeing them pointing and doing their, like, were those real things? Were those, like, I don't know. Was that, like, were they manipulating their chips to show them that? I have no idea. It was kind of crazy.
As much as I think Rachel and I will divert a lot in our scores at the end, this is the one where I'm 100% with her. The doppelgangers is stupid because the characters don't go inspect them.
Right. You
see yourself like 50 feet away. I'd go up and poke myself. Like, am I a robot? Am I a hallucination? You know what I mean? Like, you'd like freaking fiddle with yourself a little bit. Like, you know what I mean? That sounded weird.
Yeah.
But like,
that did sound very weird.
no interest in myself standing right over there pointing away. Let's go where I'm pointing. It's just.
Yeah.
I'm gonna confess. Well, first I want to say a thing about ether and sort of the medicinal thing. Funny story, side note, when I had my wisdom teeth removed, I went under, they put me under for that. And I woke up in the car talking, and I was like, I woke up and I heard somebody talking, and I was like, who's talking? And I realized it was me. And then when my friend who picked me up, I was like, I didn't remember anything. He's like, you don't remember making the nurse go back and get the magazine out of the lobby? Like, apparently I was very demanding while I was under.
Dental twilight sleep is fucked up. That is a fucked up drug. And it's not, I mean, it's funny, but it's not, right?
It's like, I literally woke up in the middle of a sentence and like, I was like, who's talking? And it was me. Like that. So
you
like,
were a heli. Your innie was a heli.
Yeah.
It
didn't even dawn on me, like, other than it being like a metaphor for that. I wonder if Lumen was using ether back then to attempt severance. Do you know what I mean? Like, have like you do. It's interesting. Yeah.
Maybe. I'm gonna confess that yes, the ending of this episode, this episode was like, I didn't see it coming. It was great. But I'm gonna also confess that this is one of the episodes that I watched on mute with captions because I was like, there's nothing happening. I just want to, and I just want to say that part of like what made me go here, I don't know if anybody has seen has watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There's 2 episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer that deal with dialogue and background music in like stellar ways. And it's the episode The Body and Hush. And so in The Body, spoiler alert for anybody who doesn't know this, Buffy comes home and she finds her mother dead on the couch. That episode has no background music whatsoever. It's just the sounds of life. It's just conversation, a car driving down the street, and it's just gut-wrenching. Like, and there's nothing to egg you along, no music to egg you. So there's that one. And then Hush is the opposite. There's no dialogue, and it's just music telling the story and the acting. So anyway, that's what made me think about it. I was like, I'm gonna watch this episode on mute and just see how I feel about it. I was like, yeah, it's kind of boring until the end. So that's my confession about that episode.
See, I loved it. I thought this was the strongest episode of season 2. Personally, it was my favorite. I just really liked it. I don't even know I just thought it was such an interesting sequence, and I liked the corporate retreat and the weird little tents, and when Milchick threw the marshmallows on the fire as like a demonstration, because he's so frustrated that things aren't going the way he wants them to. I really like Milchick's whole arc in this season, but like I love that he tries to be nice to them, but that's just not his brand. He's like trying to be the good boss and like is getting so angry. So I just thought it was really interesting, like character study of him. And like I'm glad we talked about the Ether Factory, because one of the things I love that this show does and that they dive into more in season 2 is like the creation of the lore. Like how the husband and wife, like Egan met his wife and they shared their passion for business, I believe. While he was stirring in the ether factory. And like, I just love how they mythologize everything. And even going back to that first episode, the Macrodat uprising and how the two groups are told each other is the uprising. That's back in season 1. But I really love the mythology of everything. I think it's interesting because I feel like brands do that all the time. Like, you can't pick up a bag of chips without being like, back in the factory, old Donald stirred the chips in a certain way and discovered and it's like, I just love that they're kind of like poking fun at that.
Yeah. I'm going to move.
I did have one question. I'm sorry. My one question about this episode, but then I think I figured it out, was how did they create a severed field around this entire outdoor thing? And I was like, oh, they must have flipped the OTC switch.
Whatever.
I was like, how are they severed in this outdoor environment? That was my question. And then I think I figured it out.
Yeah. They got like a Severance guy that installs things in like birthing center. Like, he's like IT guy. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm going to push forward just because our streams can only go for 2 hours and we're pushing. Thank you for sticking around. I think we'll jam it in here at the end. So almost at the end, episodes 5 through 7. Following the Orpo, a reluctant Helena is compelled to continue working on the severed floor as her auntie until Mark completes the Cold Harbor file. Milchick fulfills Dylan's demand for a funeral for Irving. During the ceremony, Dylan realizes Irving's final words to him reference a break room poster. Behind it, he finds a card with directions to the exports hall, but then quickly hides it again. Helly learns that Miss Casey is Mark's Audi's wife, and Mark tells her he cannot trust her. Milchick undergoes his first performance review, that's incredible, as the department head, where Drummond admonishes his failed kindness reforms, demanding the Indies be treated as what they really are. Milchick confronts Mark, revealing he knows that Mark and Helena had sex during the retreat. Rickon begins work on the Illumina edition of the UUR, laden with company propaganda to Devon's dismay. Irving's Audi notices Bert watching him. Bert admits he's been following him since their overtime contingency and theorizes they were romantically involved on the severed floor. He invites Irving to dinner with his husband, Fields. Mark, in a sudden flash to the severed floor while at home, sees Gemma alive as Mrs. Casey. Dylan informs Mark and Helly about his discovery of Irving's instructions to reach the exports hall. Milchick takes time off to address the infraction in his performance review, leaving Miss Huang in charge. Mark confesses to Helly that he and Helena had sex during the Orpo. Feeling that Helena stole the experience from her, Helly initiates sex with Mark. Gretchen visits Dylan's innie again and the two kiss. She later lies to Audi Dylan about the visitation. Bert and Fields have Irving over for dinner and an awkward conversation unfolds. Meanwhile, Drummond breaks into Irving's apartment and discovers his directory of Lumen employees. Ragabi tells Mark they must accelerate the reintegration process by surgically flooding his severance chip. While talking to Devon about the procedure, Mark suffers a seizure and collapses. And then finally, in flashbacks, we learn about Mark and Gemma's backstory, where they meet at a blood drive. They go on to have a loving marriage, which is eventually marred by difficulties conceiving a child. After a miscarriage, Gemma and Mark visit a fertility clinic run by Lumen. In the present, Gemma lives on a testing floor at Lumen, where she spends every day visiting multiple rooms which share the names of the MDR files. Each room awakens a separate innie forced to endure a certain unpleasant experience, overseen by Dr. Maurer. After she leaves the room, Maurer interviews her about her memories and emotions from the experiences. Meanwhile, as Mark lies unconscious, Ragabi confirms to Devon that Gemma is alive and tells her Mark is voluntarily reintegrating. Ragabi leaves when Devon suggests calling Cobell for help. Mark awakens with Devon beside him, still recalling memories of Gemma. So I guess I should start with maybe thoughts, Lisa, on either the Gemma episode or anything kind of leading up to that.
Well, so I didn't really understand what exactly was going on with Gemma. And then you realize she's being the most experimented on of all of them. Why? We don't know. I just don't know the purpose of this, but she's being basically tortured day in and day out, and you know that she tried to hurt the doctor and get out of there more than once, right? So she definitely is not in agreement. I'm like, how? Okay, so we have the car accident, right? Mm-hmm. So did she agree to this, or did they just say, yeah, it's just going to be a while, you can tell your husband, and they're like, okay, no, we're going to take you and we're going to fake your death, right? And so that whole thing was just like, okay, this is way deeper than any stupid pushing numbers around thing, right? So things are starting to cross now a little bit in innies and outies lives, or we're starting to get a little bit more of a crossing and influence on each other, and we learn more about Lumen and more about this Cold Harbor, and then we see Gemma, and I'm like, wow, okay, so I know she wants to get out, but new things have happened. It's been over a year, right? Over a year of that she's had to endure that. I can't even imagine, right? So yeah, it is quite interesting as we come to the conclusion of what are we going to find out at the end, and what is going to be left open for us to wonder about for the next year. Hopefully only a year, right?
Yeah, right. Knock on wood. Jeremy, you want to say something?
Yeah, so I have a lot to say about that. So can we talk about Cold Harbor and the Miss Casey experiment, right?
Yeah,
Are we at that point?
Yep.
So the thing that confuses me the most is that if Mark is sorting his memories of Miss Casey and this is her rancor and this is her horniness, and he's and it's affecting the programming. Why can the other employees do it for Miss Casey?
But that's
that's what I was wondering too.
For Miss Casey, or are they doing it for their own loved ones, or
No,
are they doing it?
None of the others matter. I don't think any of the others matter. I think Mark is the only one that matters in this whole situation. But they're putting all the situation around him so he complies, right?
Yeah. That was my theory. As to whether or not they could work on someone else, I don't know if it has to align, but that, to me, that was the biggest thing, is she has dealt with
that too, Rachel.
she's dealing with she's arguably the worst emotional trauma that anyone can experience, a parent losing a child. And if they can overcome that, then the barrier is fully complete. That's why it's the Holy Grail file. I don't know. Yeah.
Right, because he says that Cold Harbor will be one of the greatest achievements of mankind, right? And to me, this.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say Cold Harbor is apparently a term for an inn that would not serve meals but would give people shelter. And I thought metaphorically that's kind of interesting, because they're trying to create this thing where it's okay, let's make an employee that sustains us, but we don't actually have to deal with the emotional part of a human being. We will sever the worker from their heart.
Right.
But Rachel, what are you going to say?
Yeah, I don't know if we're at the theory portion of the conversation, but somebody said in the chat way earlier when we were talking about season 1, they were like, what created this world what's going on in this world that people would choose to do this? And when the whole Miss Casey thing, Gemma thing is revealed, and it's revealed that basically they're testing whether or not she can get over that, because the last test is to disassemble the crib, right? And so it's they're testing whether or not this ship is going to hold against that pain, right? And I'm like, because one of my millions of questions is, why are there not very many background actors in all the city scenes and things like that? You don't see other people, and I'm like, has the world ended, and is Lumen Industries trying to find a way for people to sever that pain from their lives? I'm like, is that the experiment that's going on? So they're like, if we can test that limit with her, then maybe we can apply it to everyone. So I'm like, maybe there's just been some global catastrophe, and this is the good works that they think that they're doing, is they're going to sever people from that pain so they don't have to feel it.
Yeah, which does speak, I was gonna say, that does speak to the Cobell episode, which is the next one, where that town is a total shithole, and maybe
right. I will say one thing that took me out of it a little bit. I don't know if anybody ever saw Joss Whedon's Dollhouse. Basically, Deacon Lockman is playing the same role. She's just different people in each room. I'm like, oh, she's back in the dollhouse.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
But I do think it's also interesting because, I was saying in the chat, what's gone on in the world, and I almost wonder if instead of a nuclear apocalypse, it's an economic apocalypse, and the only way to afford a somewhat normal life is to kind of do this to yourself. And the haves and the have-nots have gotten so extreme. I hope that gets fleshed out.
I feel like this is happening now.
Right.
I don't know, when they showed that town with the ether, and that one guy at the diner took a hit off the ether. I've been really haunted by this article I read about, I sent it to Kyle and Sarah, of how 60% of millennials and Gen Z are basically abusing some sort of substance while at work. Just we're already doing these things to survive because we can't deal with the cognitive dissonance of working while being aware of what else is going on in the world.
Yeah.
And a bunch, and it also reminds me of class too, because okay, the lower class is like doing ether in the real world, where like, vaping, drinking, and then the higher class is doing the same thing but calling it like I'm microdosing like psychedelics. But
Or
you're still
the higher
doing
class is severing, because isn't that rich lady? Didn't she sever? Like,
Yes,
so she
for the
would have to
baby.
raise
Yeah, for the
her
birth.
kid.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to feel the pain of birth.
Yeah, so maybe only the rich can even afford the severing, and for the poor, it's the ether.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
Yeah.
What else you gotta
Yeah.
love though? Go ahead, Rachel.
No, I was gonna say one funny aside I had. I felt Milchick's pain in his review. I work in tech.
I want to talk about
be a
this.
dev manager, and one part of what you do in development, software development, is you do code reviews. And in one of my annual reviews, I got dinged for finding too many bugs in code reviews. I'm like, that's the point of a code
Oh my
review.
God.
And I'm like, that's literally
Rachel.
the point. But it's one of those things, because I've been through management training where like you have to find, there has to be something for the person to work on. I'm like, but I didn't create the bugs in the code. I found them and flagged them so we could fix them. Like, to tell me that, to ding me in my review because
You're making other people feel bad, Rachel. Come on.
But I asked that question. I was like, is it the tone that I'm, is it the tone?
You're using too many big words, Rachel.
That's exactly.
Oh my God.
Exactly.
We didn't touch upon his gift of Keegan re-imaged like himself, and I was like, oh, I don't know what that feels like, but that must be really weird and very icky.
It was very.
And he reached out to the only other person that is a person of color on staff with him, and she was like,
No.
Yeah, she couldn't say anything.
I was like,
I'm like, is the board always listening to her? Like, can she not say anything?
Yeah.
Or does she not want to say anything because she doesn't want to get in trouble? It was very icky. But then there was also, I was a little bit severed in terms of my opinion of this. So like, there was the in-world, ickiness of it. And then there was a little bit of like ickiness from the writer's standpoint. I was like, are they like making light of people who have like Black Jesus hanging up in their house? And I'm like, did not understand the historical context there. I was like, just let it go, Rachel. I was like, just let it go, But yeah, it was very icky. And I did appreciate that he at least tried to talk to somebody else about it. And and I actually appreciate that, because like she just smiles, like this plastic smile, like she can't say anything. I'm like, I wonder if the board is always listening to her. Yeah.
There's so much more to Milchick. So much more. It's crazy.
I'm gonna jump. Yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
I mean, I was just thinking like maybe that was commentary on the hollowness of like, we want to make sure you feel represented, but it's hollow because it's coming from the corporation that exploits you.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with that 100%. Yeah.
And the torture scene where he makes Mr. Milchick say things in fewer and fewer words.
Yes.
Like literally wanting him to say less. And to be stupider and like, and that's why
we don't want you to get better. We don't want you to improve. We don't want you to make other people feel bad.
But then also, like, as someone who really spends a lot of time picking my words when I'm like writing or podcast scripting or whatever, I was like, that's hell. Oh my God, fewer. I was like, let him alone. Let him say his words.
Well, and then he finally says, and he reverts back to the big word. Devoured feces or something like that.
Devoured feculence.
That's great. It's such a wonderful moment. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna blast through all the way to the end right now because we've got basically 15 minutes, and then we'll do our ratings. Okay, so summarizing Cobell's Salt Neck episode, which is the seaside town she grew up in. We learned that she lived with her aunt, Sissy, a Lumen devotee, in charge of the home. The aunt did not get along with the mom. Hampton finds her and they take ether. Hampton is the guy from the town. In the outdoor storeroom, Harmony finds her yearbook and sketches of the severance procedure and chip, proving she was in fact the true inventor. Sissy tries to burn the pages, but Harmony saves them. She answers a phone call from Devin, who informs her about Mark's reintegration. On the day of Cold Harbor's final completion date, Mark and Devin meet Cobell, who says Gemma will die after the file is completed. Mark calls in sick, promising Milchick will come in the next day. Miss Huang completes her stint as deputy manager. Milchick sends her on her way. And then we find out we have an ending to the Bert and Irving series where he is sent off on a train. We'll talk about that in a second. And then at night, they sneak into the severed cabin, which is the same birthing lodge where Devon had her child. Mark's innie awakes in the cabin where Cobell is waiting. Through video recordings, Mark's outie asks his innie to rescue Gemma from the testing floor after he completes the Cold Harbor file. Otherwise, she will die. Mark's innie storms off after he realizes he's being asked to sacrifice himself and Helly. Dylan returns to read a letter from his outie, deferring his resignation request. Mark arrives back on the severed floor, completes Cold Harbor, and receives a celebration from Milchick and a marching band. Helly and Dylan trap Milchick in the MDR bathroom while Mark searches for the hallway to the testing floor. In the Cold Harbor room, Gemma is tasked with disassembling a crib. She responds without emotion to Dr. Maurer and Jane Egan's delight. Drummond summons Lauren to sacrifice a goat, but discovers Mark attempting to break into the exports hall. He tries to kill Mark, but is subdued by Lauren. Mark takes Drummond hostage, but accidentally kills him in the testing floor elevator during the transition to an outie. Mark finds Gemma, and they escape to the severed floor, reverting to their innies. Mark guides Gemma through the exit door, but chooses instead to return to Helly. The two run through the hallways as an emergency alarm blares. So there's a lot there. But what was your take? You can start with Jeremy on this ending, really.
So it's tough because this season 1 ending is so perfect, you know. And I don't think they quite achieved the same level of like, oh my God, what a way to end the season. A lot of interesting layers there. We talked about missed opportunities with like, oh, you know, how interesting would it be if the sexuality was different for the innie or the outie? I was a little disappointed that he has sex with Helly's outie, and then the sex with innie also just as awesome but different. And I'm like, how interesting would it have been if he like was sexually more satisfied with the outie and she picked up on that? You know what I mean? And that's like, there's so many interesting things you can do with this concept. I was very frustrated that he stayed with Helly and left Miss Casey. But then again, though, it's like he's gonna die if he leaves. And the romantic tension was with Helly, not with Miss Casey. So like it made sense for the character as much as it frustrated me. And the ending, the alarm blares, but like it's not just that the alarm blares, it's like the whole screen turns red.
Red.
So to me, that's Mark and Helly's innies being deleted. Like I think in season 3 they should only be their outies. And in my mind, that was like the Don't Stop Believin' Sopranos moment of like the music cuts out because he's dead. It turns red because that's what it looks like to an innie when they're deleted.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What's your take, Lisa?
Yeah, so I didn't know what I wanted to happen at the end, but there's one thing that so I was getting this weird kind of vibe when they were setting up the Cold Harbor thing, and Jamie's going into the office, and they have the goat and things like, and there's ritualistic speaking and stuff like that. I was like, are we in a version of Get Out where somehow Jane Egan is allowed to drop this older body in favor of a newer body? It just kind of felt like that to me. I didn't know what it was. Then you guys were bringing up the thing about we don't want to deal with workers, you know, emotionality and things like that, or I don't want to deal with everything that's going on in the world, and that makes quite a lot more sense. I kind of went out there when I was thinking about things, but I'm like, there has to be a purpose to this, and I'm not quite sure. I don't really think that Lumen is caring about the world at large. I do think that they care about them and themselves and their own interests and the interests of other people that are like them or rich, you know, and things like that, which is a lot like certain people in the world today. And so I was like, I know what he's going to choose at the end because he's his innie, and so he's going to choose Helly. But I think that whole light thing, was a very, very complicated I give kudos to the whole production people. It's like that last thing was amazing, and the running at the beginning with the point of view stuff is just like, it's amazing. I'm actually going to watch it again because I just got invigorated by having this conversation. I'm going to watch the whole thing again, but I hope that they don't die, but the chances are that they probably will. They'll be like, nope, this is it. This is the end. Your innie no longer exists. Especially Helena's, innie. They're like, no. So I don't know what's going to happen, but it'll be kind of interesting to find out how they can get back up again from that low part.
What's your, while we go to the next people, we'll do double dip since we're running out of time. What's your rating, Jeremy? What's your rating, Lisa? 1 to 10 on Jeremy's scale, or 0 to
yes.
10?
9.
Okay.
Yeah. So if 5 is you regret watching it, I think season 1 is a 10, and I think season 2 is an 8. So I will hit the middle and say a 9 as well.
Nice.
Great.
All right. How about Jackie? Let's see.
She might be frozen.
Oh, there she is.
We're just doing the rating overall both seasons.
Yeah. Do it. I mean, you could split the seasons if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, because
I think you're muted or something, Jackie. I can't tell.
Yeah, we can't.
No, I think you're cut out.
I'll go ask her.
Uh-oh.
Go to the next. Rachel, you go next.
Okay, let's go, Rachel. Get
Yeah.
Rachel's wild card. Here we go.
Rachel.
My rating, I'd give it. I'll give 2 ratings. The one is before this conversation, and one after this conversation. Before this conversation, I probably would have given it a 3.
you're not muted.
And
Agree.
after this conversation, maybe a 5.5.
Change it a
If
bit.
I just regret watching, I still regret watching it. Again, before
Oh,
this
no.
conversation, it was more. And then I just also wanted to agree with Lisa that I don't see the path forward, because no matter what, I don't see how the Ennies get to keep going. So him choosing Helly, it seems pointless, because it's not like, I mean, his outie still has to make a decision to come to work every day, but why would his outie make the decision to come to work anymore? So it just makes no sense to me that they're running off into the sunset. I'm like, where are you going? Like, there's no future. So
Yeah, I'm curious to see where they're going to go for sure, because it's like, yeah, he could just kill him right now. So
yeah.
What's your take, Sarah?
Well, I think I guess I saw it maybe as self-actualization for the Innie, because it was like he's making a decision completely on his own, divorced from what his outie wants. So I guess I saw it as like growth for Mark, like he's making this decision on his own and deciding like I'm separate from my outie. Not that he hasn't always been, but I don't know. I just think that that's what that decision was meant to be. But I just want to touch really quickly on Gemma's little rooms, like where she's going to the dentist. And like, I don't know if you guys noticed, but in one of them, she's writing thank you letters.
Right.
And there was a line several episodes prior to that where Mark said to her in a flashback, "Oh, you hate writing thank you letters." So all of the things she's going through are things she hates, which also made me think, again, like a Scientology or whatever religion is this thing about conquering your weaknesses and like, you know, sort of methodically going through your sins or whatever, your deadly sins, and like conquering them, which is again why I think the religious metaphor is like so strong. And I didn't know if that was supposed to be, again, like that's her version of like self-actualization. Like both characters are kind of reached in a different way. You know, he's more, I don't know, rebellious, I guess. And she like followed this prescribed lumen path of like actualization. I don't know.
I don't know if anybody caught this. When he finished the Cold Harbor file and Helly's looking over his shoulder, she goes, "Oh, at least it was a happy one." Because, you know, they do it based on feelings. So I think the memory that he's, you know, calling is when he bought the crib and, you know, they were hopeful about having a baby, but then her test in the room is to take it apart.
Right.
So I just thought that was interesting, the juxtaposition of the two.
Yeah. Did everyone give their rating, or what was your rating, Sarah?
I didn't give my rating. Yeah, I'm about the same as Jeremy. Like first season's a 10 for me. Second season, like, you know, more like an 8. So yeah, overall a 9.
Nice. I am gonna go 10 for both, honestly. I don't know why this show speaks to me so much. I think it's because I'm a huge nerd, especially legacy technology nerd, and a huge fan of anything cult or religion related, and it is kind of and good writing and just dialogue, like weirdness, the melons, all of it is like totally my jam. So but I am curious to see how do they answer the question of like where do they go in a world where they could just kill them?
Where do they go?
Yeah, and I'm curious to see too, like, will we see more about Milchick in season 3, his backstory? Will we see more about Lumen? Would we see flashbacks of Lumen 100 years ago? Like, I don't know, like if you saw Righteous Gemstones this year, they opened with 200 or 150 years ago in the past to show you, like, maybe they'll do something like that. So I would love to see what happens, and hopefully not 3 years from now. I'll put some of these in the replay. But one of the interesting things I thought, which I was like obsessed with, Helly and the actress, Britt Lauer. She joined the circus in between the seasons, which is amazing to me. She was obsessed with joining a small circus, and she fulfilled it and did that. So I thought that was like very on brand for her as like a weirdo, which I love. Cool. Rachel's out at season 3. We'll see.
She's severing.
Yeah, you're severing.
It's a time investment.
Yeah. Well,
No,
this is
fine.
awesome. This is our longest episode yet. It was a lot to cover, so thank you for coming. If we want to quickly before.
Wait, did Jackie get to give her?
Oh, yeah. Did you give your? Yeah, right. You gave.
She's in the chat. She said.
Yeah.
Oh,
cool.
in the chat.
Cool.
Oh,
Let's go around real quickly and just say where else we can follow you online if everyone wants to follow it. And we'll put this in the replay show too. Maybe we'll start this time with Rachel. Anywhere else? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, imperfectgenius.com. I have a podcast called Imperfect Genius. You can check me out. I talk about tech and entrepreneurship.
Awesome.
Nice.
I gotta check that out. Sweet.
Nice.
How about Jeremy?
The oldswitcheroo.com, old retro video game podcast. Come check us out.
Amazing. Sarah.
nothing to plug. I'm on Blue Sky at Hagfish.
Hagfish. All right. And Lisa.
I don't have anything to plug either. Hopefully soon something. But if you want to chat with me, I'm on streamteam.club.
Very nice. How about Jackie?
I'm a writer and I post stuff on Instagram. So it's at Jacqueline Francis.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I do a newsletter every Sunday, kylesjunkdrawer.com. Check it out. And I thank you all for this. We'll put the replay up. We've pushed the limitations of the platform. 2 hours max. We're almost there. Thanks for spending your Sunday talking about this. This is awesome.
Thanks for inviting me up on
Thank
stage.
you for stepping it up.
Talk to y'all later.
Yeah.
Jeremy.
Jeremy's got the dance party going.
Dance party going. Woohoo!
That's season 3 of Jeremy's Captain Field Check.
That's right.
I'll see y'all later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.